without further ado, I'll introduce myself and then I'll shut up for a bit so you can hear from the experts. My name's Rowan and I'm based in Copenhagen, Denmark. I'm a teacher. I'm Australian. I have about, 10 years teaching experience across Australia, the UK and Sweden. So I know a bit about relocation and a bit about visas. I've had a few in my lifetime. And in amongst that, I've got 12 years of global recruitment experience. So my role at ANZ UK is to work with a team based around the world, supporting educators like yourselves with finding jobs in Australia or the UK. They're two of our main, and New Zealand. So they're three geographies where we can support educators based on working rights, which we'll unpack this evening in the webinar. And we work in all kinds of settings, from early childhood, primary settings, secondary settings, special needs settings, private, public, independent, Catholic, day-to-day opportunities, contracts, permanent opportunities, pretty much everything within education, all kinds of roles. So you'll get a follow-up email from me with links to talk to our team, but it's more about visas and working rights for Australia. That's our focus tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Darren and Sue, and they can tell you a bit about themselves and we'll get the presentation cracking.
Okay, thanks very much, Ryan. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the ANZ UK and VisaGo webinar. I'm here with my colleague, Sue Tempany. How you going, Sue?
Yeah, I'm good, Darren. Good.
Good stuff. Okay, Sue is the expert on skills assessments for teachers and skilled visas, and I am here in the capacity of your registered migration agent to offer visa advice. VisaGo Australia has an office in the UK and Australia, and we assist people through the process of obtaining their visas to Australia. So Sue has over 20 years experience of processing visas, and I've been a registered migration agent for over 18 years. So what we want to do today is just discuss the most popular visas by educators to move to Australia to work, live and play. So here you'll see the different visa categories that the majority of educators move to Australia on. The 417, the 462 working holiday visa is the most popular, as it is quick, cheap, and obtaining a visa only costs 635 Australian dollars. And did you know that over 20,000 Irish citizens were granted working holiday visas in the past 12 months? So it's a very popular visa, and that is the highest amount in over 16 years. We'll also be talking about the Skilled Independent Subclass 189. This is the best visa for those teachers or educators looking to move to Australia on a more permanent basis and that are on the medium to long-term strategic skills list. The Australian government has issued over 32,000 189 and 491 visas in the last financial year. The last visa we want to speak about, the other visa we want to talk about is the skilled nominated visa, which is the 190. Sue will cover that because that's more state sponsored. So for those primary school teachers looking to migrate to Australia on a more permanent basis, you must have state sponsored. So we'll cover that a little bit later on. And the last visa is the 482 employee sponsored visa. The employee sponsored visa is visa for those who are looking to secure a job before you actually go to Australia. Okay, so we can just go back to that slide.
Sorry.
Thanks, Ryan. So the 12-month working holiday visa is popular due to its flexibility, low cost, and quick processing time. If you're from the UK and Ireland, the visas are sometimes instantly approved or approved within 24 hours. If you have any medical issues or any criminal issues, then it'll obviously take anywhere between 7 days and maybe up to 30 days, just depending on your circumstances. The visa is designed for those people from overseas to come to Australia and travel and enjoy the lifestyle and scenery whilst topping up their bank account with casual work. The basic requirements are between 18 and 35, depending on the country of your passport, evidence of sufficient funds, which is usually around about 5,000 Australian dollars, no substantial criminal convictions or medical issues, You cannot include children. If you have children and you're, say, 31, you want to come on a working holiday visa, unfortunately, you won't be eligible for that visa, and also have an eligible passport. You can look at that visa on the government website, which is imi.homeaffairs.gov.au. Now, the majority of our people today are from the UK, and there's been some interesting developments in the last 6 months. If you don't know already, many UK citizens, approximately 15,000 last year, have taken the advantage of the UK-Australia Free Trade Agreement, with the age being lifted from 31 to 35, along with other countries like Canada, Denmark, France, Republic of Ireland, and Italy. UK passport holders from the 1st of July this year can also be issued 3 12-month working holiday visas without having to complete the 88 days regional work, which is a major shift in policy for the Australian government. This is an interesting change by the Australian government, and it means a lot of UK working holiday visas will not now go out into the most beautiful parts of regional Australia, into the wine industry, farming sector, but can have those 3 years in 3 12-month lots without that 88 days. We just move on to the next slide. Yeah, so this has been a lot of questions that were being asked a lot. So some people who had working holidays 2 or 3 years ago, if you're a UK passport holder and you had your first year working holiday visa, you can apply for your second and third without having to do the 88 days after the 1st of July. So as you can see from that slide there, you will not have to meet the requirement when applying for your second and third, which is quite critical. Just the next one, please, Ron.
Yep.
Thanks. So I'll just quickly run through it with you. UK passport holders can choose to apply for a first, second and third working holiday visa, subclass 417 visa at any time while you still meet the eligible age requirement, which is now 35. You do not have to stay in Australia for 3 years in a row. Applicants can lodge applications for second and third working holiday visas in or outside Australia, and as long as they meet the age requirements. So that's quite an important one. And if you go to the next slide, please, Ron.
Yep.
You can go to that website there, and the Australian government has actually got 6 examples of people who've applied for 417s previously or are looking to apply for a 417 now, and all the different scenarios virtually cover the majority of questions that we find. So if you go onto that website and look at those 6 examples, you should be able to see yourself in one of those. If you don't, by all means, drop myself an email at darren@visa-go-australia.com, or you can just go through our website, which is visa-go.com. Okay, so this is the employee sponsored. So for this visa here, if you're too old like me for a working holiday visa, then the employee sponsored 482 is a great option. The employer often pays the agent and sponsorship fees, only leaving you, the visa applicant, the visa fee to pay, which currently per adult is 335 Australian dollars. For those educators like primary school teachers, the new rules introduced recently mean you can now obtain permanent residency after working for the same employer for 2 years, which is quite huge. Also good news for those QTS qualified teachers from the UK that cannot get a positive skills assessment through the Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leaderships. You can also go on the 482 and bypass the skills assessment, and if you stay with that employer for 2 years, you can then apply for permanent residency under the employee sponsored subclass 186. So that's quite important in fact if you can't get a positive skills assessment, and Sue will talk about that a little bit later on. This visa can be granted for a period of up to 12 months and up to 4 years, and there is no age restriction. So once again, if you're a 50-year-old, you could be living and working in Australia under this visa. For this visa, you must have the appropriate qualifications and a minimum of 2 years full-time paid employment. So if you're a newly qualified teacher and you've only got 6 months work experience, the 482 is not applicable to you. You have to have a minimum of 2 years and the qual, or if you haven't got the qualification, you can use 5 years of work experience in lieu of that qualification to be eligible for this visa. And just move on to the next one. And if you have any questions about any of these visas, just put it in the chat room and we can come back to them a little bit later on. Or if we do have time, I can run through them as we're going through. So the skilled visa. Now, we love the skilled independent 189 visa. This is the best visa without a doubt, with priority processing, super quick processing time, no sponsorship required. This visa allows you to live anywhere in Australia. You can work in any occupation, receive free health cover, free schooling, and include the whole family. So this is the ideal visa at the moment for those teachers looking to move to Australia on a permanent basis. You are also getting priority processing from the Australian government. And Sue has got some really good information. Actually, Sue, if you just want to run through us now, what are you finding on the processing times for the 189 visa?
189, once you've received an invitation to apply and you lodge your application, I mean, for instance, I had 2 that I lodged on the 10th of Jan. 1 was approved last week, 1 this week, so 4 weeks, which is, you know, pretty good. Non-priority occupations. I mean, I've still got some that are sitting at immigration and have been there for 18 months, 2 years, some of them. So, yeah, priority occupations at the moment are really going through quickly. Same with 190s. You know, you're looking at around maybe 4 weeks. So,
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And that is super quick compared to anywhere between, what, maybe 4 to 6 months previously?
For priority ones, for teachers, do you mean, or?
Yeah. Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would say in the last programme year, even teachers were taking around 4 months, sometimes a little bit longer. But this year, for whatever reason, 189s and 190s, they're picking them up super quick. I mean, before Christmas, I had one application that was lodged. The next day, a case officer was allocated and was requesting medicals. So, yeah, if you're on the ball and you get your medicals done quickly and your police checks are clear, you're looking at around, on average at the moment, around 4 weeks turnaround, which is incredible.
Yeah. And just on that point too that Sue's raised, if you're looking to get your skilled visa 189 or 190 super quick, it pays to get your criminals or your police checks done. So if you've lived in any country for 12 months in the last 10 years, so if you lived in the UK and then you've lived in Ireland and then you've worked in Spain for longer than 12 months in the last 10 years, get all your police clearances at the start or close to when you're going to lodge your visa. So you've already got those. And then once your visa is lodged, you can generate a HAP ID and get your medicals done. So then when the visa is being looked at by the case processor, it's already there to be approved. So it just speeds up that whole process. Okay, so that's the skilled visa categories. And we just want to run through the costs for a skilled visa. So if you're an educator looking to move to Australia on a skilled visa, you have to do a skills assessment through AITSL. That skills assessment is $1,050. The confusion around teachers having to do the English test or not do the test is if you've got a UK or Irish passport, you don't necessarily have to do the English test for the skills assessment. If you have a non-English speaking country passport, then you must do the English test, and it has to be the IELTS academic. Is that right, Sue? AITSL won't accept Pearson's or any others?
That's the only one they'll accept, the IELTS academic. They won't accept the PTE or any other versions. So it must be IELTS and it must be academic. and you need to score a minimum of 8.0 on the speaking and listening aspect, and a minimum of 7.0 on writing and reading.
Exactly. So that's for
Yeah.
the skills assessment. So if you're a UK passport holder, you don't necessarily have to do that, or they can ask if they're not sure. But I
No.
don't think I've ever seen anyone get asked from an English-speaking country. Have you, Sue?
No, if you're, it's not so much your passport, it's where you completed your qualifications. So if your qualifications were completed in one of the 6 countries that they accept, then, and it must be the whole 4 years. So you need a 4-year qualification combined for AITSL. And the whole 4 years must be completed in an English-speaking country, including the supervised teaching practice.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
So the confusion comes whereas those teachers or educators that don't need the English for their skills assessment, we often ask for you to do your English test to get bonus points. So, for example, if you do the IELTS and get 7 in writing, reading, listening, and speaking, we can claim the bonus of 10 extra points. And if you get 8s across the board, we can claim a bonus of 20 points. If you don't do the English test and you have a English-speaking passport, you get 0 points. So it's quite important being so competitive, the more points you have, which is why we often ask for educators to do the English exam. And as you can see here, the Australian government fees for the main applicant, $4,640. If you do have a partner, your partner can be included in the visa application. Now, a partner is classified if you're married, or if you're not married, you can still include your partner if you're in a de facto relationship, and you have to have a minimum of 12 months evidence. So we'd like to see a joint bank account for longer than a year, a joint rental agreement, utility bills and council tax, good legal documents to show the Australian government that you're in a committed and ongoing relationship to be able to include your partner. Children are 1,160. Medicals on average around 700 for the chest X-ray full medical, and about 50 Australian dollars per police check. Perfect. So we're just going to get on to a few examples here. So a secondary school teacher from the United Kingdom and Ireland, what visa options do you actually have? Well, the first one would be the 12-month working holiday visa. And as we know, you can apply for that tomorrow. If you're lucky, you could have that visa the next day and you could be making your plans and on your way to Australia. So Rowan, how many people are you seeing coming through ANZ UK on working holiday visas at the moment? Has there been a big uptake on that?
Oh, massively. So I'd say 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10 educators that we work with from all, not just UK and Ireland, but any country that are eligible for a 417 or 462 working holiday visa. It's just easy, isn't it? Like, you know, the 417, as you've mentioned, Darren, is really, it's electronic. It takes seconds to process. You can apply 12 months before you arrive. So it's just an easy way to get to Australia. As you said, $635. A great gateway to those other visas that you've also talked about as well.
Yeah. So you can use the working holiday as a stepping stone visa. And just on that point, you can also have you can come to Australia on a 417 or the 462 visa, have your skilled visa being processed in the background, be loving Australia, working in Australia, enjoying Australia, with the fact knowing that you may have the permanent visa, which can be granted 2 to 3 months whilst you're in Australia, and then that'll just cancel your working holiday visa, and then you'll have your permanent residency visa for the next 5 years, which would be fantastic. Oh, sorry, mate, can you just go back to that last slide?
Yeah. Sorry.
That's right.
I'll have to go back. Yeah, there we go.
Perfect. Yeah. So not only the 12-month working holiday visa, if you're out there on Australia, then it gives you that opportunity to start employment with an employer. If that employer likes what they see and you're enjoying that work experience with that employer, you can then ask them to sponsor you on the 482 visa. it's a lot easier to get employees sponsored for 482 visa when you're in Australia and working for that particular employer. Is that your experience? Rowan, to get 482?
Absolutely, Darren. Australian principals, they want to meet you. They really want to meet you in person to make sure you align with their school and their culture of that school before they commit to giving you sponsorship. It's just other countries I know offer contracts online remotely, and I understand that myself. I've had them myself. But Australian principals aren't there yet. They want to meet you, and it's important that they select the right educator for their school. Important for the educator that they're connected with that school in some way too. So, I will talk about an opportunity of Australian principals visiting the UK and Ireland later in the presentation. But as Darren said, if you can wow and dazzle and impress a school on it, say you're on a working holiday visa, they're more inclined to offer you sponsorship if they have a license to do so. So. Yeah, it's what I would say is sponsorship is more of an option, absolutely, if you have met with a principal in person rather than having a remote interview.
Yeah, that's great. The working holiday is a try before you buy, is what we often say. It gives the employee opportunity for them to see what you're like in the classroom, and it's also an opportunity for you too to also see what your employer's like. So, and if you're both happy, that's a fantastic option. Now, for those people who are just saying, look, I've been to Australia before, I love it, I just want to live there and get out there and start work with the certainty of having a 5-year visa, then obviously the skilled visa options are your pick. And the 189 at the moment is being processed under priority. Sue and I have never seen educators get into Australia so quick. And the employment opportunities are huge as well. Ryan, how many jobs have you got? And is it all over Australia that you're covering at the moment? What are you seeing on the employment front?
So it depends what type of work. If you're looking for temp work, like day-to-day type of work, it's only between Melbourne, Geelong and Sydney on the East Coast. But we have permanent opportunities team across every other state that can look at both metro and regional settings. That some have licenses to sponsor, all will accept skilled visas, particularly in those hard to fill areas in regional Australia, and often lots of other perks they will offer, like subsidised or free housing, access to a car, relocation support with funding for transiting or bringing luggage and things across as well. So I could go on for hours about some of the stories of regional settings, but also metro, where schools have really embraced travelling educators on skilled visas.
Yeah, so you can see the skilled visa is very attractive for employers because they don't have to sponsor. They're looking to move on to the next one. Right, so here we've got the option, say, from someone from Fiji or South Africa. Unfortunately, you can't get the 12-month working holiday visa, but you have got the option of the 482 visa, and you've also got the permanent visa option as well. And we've got quite a few clients from South Africa, Sue. We're processing a few at the moment, aren't we, from South Africa? Yep. And yep. The South African teachers, all their qualifications match over to the Australian standard?
Yeah, absolutely. Slightly different education system in South Africa in that they have foundation and different. They're sort of their phases in rather than what we sort of see as standard here in the UK, where you have primary, secondary, or early years. But yeah, they transfer over just the same way. So yeah. Never had any problems with any South African teachers getting a skilled visa.
Yeah. And on that point, if you're not sure about your qualifications, if you're UK based and you've got a QTS or a SCIT program, just send a copy of your degree, your PGCE, your transcripts, and your CV, and send that through, and soon I can have a look at it for you and advise you whether you're going to get through with a positive skills assessment. And just on those people from Fiji or South Africa on this slide, you will require that English test, as we spoke about before, IELTS academic, and you need 8877 in the different areas.
Yeah.
So For those people, the 482 and the skilled visa are your options. So we've got another couple of examples here. Teresa in Nigeria sent in an inquiry for this. I'm a qualified teacher. How do I get to work permit sponsorship to work in Australia? So Rowan, I mean, we handle the visas and we handle the skills assessment to get the visas. But do you do anything on helping teachers like the VIT for Victoria, getting their licensing, which is different to the visa requirements?
Yeah, so I mean, we're not the boom gate on that. We can't tell you. We can't give you approval on whether you can teach or not in Victoria or New South Wales. Every state has their own regulating authority, you know, around, and I'm a member of the Victorian Teachers Union or Institute of Teachers, so they have these expectations and criteria that you need to meet to be recognised as a teacher in Australia. But as you touched on before, Darren, must have, and you Sue, 4 years of tertiary training inclusive of teacher training, must have a minimum of 45 days of observed practicum placement. These are things that you must have before you'd be considered to be a teacher in Australia. You might have the visa, like you might get the skills assessment, you might get the visa, but you won't be recognised as a teacher unless you have that total of at least 4 years of tertiary training. We have unfortunately, a lot of schools during COVID had 3-year teacher training courses, which is great, it accelerates you and gets you teaching. But unfortunately, Australian teaching authorities won't recognise 3-year trained educators. You must have the 4 years. So that's something to really consider and maybe have a top up if that's what you need. But I mean, look, there are schools out there that have high demand of educators, particularly in STEM, science, technology, English and maths, that would absolutely consider sponsoring you before they actually met you. Not many, and you'd have to be, you know, very well experienced in your subject area. But our team will do our very best to sort of nurture that relationship and try and get you an interview at the very least. But it is a really, as I said, Australian principals just want to meet you in person. That's just what they want to do. So as Darren said, if you can afford it, if you can find the funds to get a skilled visa, it is by far the best way to get to Australia. We'll get you your dream job. Don't worry about that. But the skilled visa, much more preferred by principals as opposed to the sponsorship route.
And I think if you've got the skilled visa, it means that you've already gone through the skill assessment process with the AITSL. So you pretty much know, just from what you said, Rowan, in terms of what the registration requirements are with the different states, you know you're going to meet that, because you wouldn't have got a positive skill assessment if you didn't have the total of 4 years education and your 45 days supervised teaching practice. So you've got that reassurance already that you should be able to get registered regardless of which state you're going to. Because I think they're all pretty much the same, aren't they? I know VIT that's their requirements, but
yeah, pretty similar. Yeah.
Excellent tips there. Okay, so yeah, we've touched on this already. South African, Sue's already processing a lot of South African teachers. And look, if you're coming into South Africa, like Rowan said, the 482 probably isn't a possibility for you. You're not eligible for the working holiday visa. So the skilled visa is ideal, especially for families, because you're coming to Australia with your family, you've got a permanent visa, you get free health cover, free schooling. So yeah, the 189 or the 190 state sponsor is ideal for those teachers from countries like South Africa. So here we go, the ultimate question of the IELTS English test. Do I need an IELTS English test? And this is from Ashika from Fiji. Yeah, because you're not from an English-speaking country necessarily, Ashika, you would have to do the English exam for the skills assessment. And as you can see there, it would have to be the academic, and you would have to get a score of 7 out of 9 in writing and reading, and 8 out of 9 in listening and speaking in the academic IELTS. For visa requirements, the minimum is 5 out of 9 in 4 areas of the general IELTS for the 482, and 6 in all 4 areas for the skilled visa categories. But if you're going through as an educator, you need to have the high English anyway. So those requirements for the other visas aren't really applicable. And of course, if you're from Ireland and the UK, 6 out of 9 in all 4 areas for general purpose. Did you want to cover anything on that, Sue, or I think you covered it earlier on, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the 6 out of 9 in all 4 areas, that just gives you competent English, which means that you don't have to pay the English language tuition fee charge. But ideally, you would want to score at least a proficient score on the English test so that you can get points. It's so competitive that really, you know, we would say even to teachers, you want to get a minimum of a proficient score, which means if you're doing IELTS, it would be 7 out of 9 in all 4 areas. If you want the superior score, it would be 8 out of 9. So yeah, the 6 out of 9 just gives you your competency, doesn't it, Darren? So it means that you don't pay the charge, but you want to aim higher than that.
Yeah, exactly. And the 6 out of 9 is important. If you've got a partner and you're claiming English points for your partner, then the partner only has to have the proficient. So that's really where it comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've only just clicked on to the question. There's a lot of questions in there. So what we might do is we'll get through the presentation, because hopefully with the questions we have, we'll answer a lot of those. And if not, then we can always get back to those at the end.
Yep.
Okay, just the next slide, please, Ron. That is the next slide. Sorry. All right. Right, so we've got a query from Nambia. Which qualifications should I have completed to receive a positive skills assessment through AITSL? Well, Sue, I'll hand that one over to you because you're the expert in here. You've covered it already, but if you just want to give a brief overview on that, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, so some applicants may have completed a 4-year Bachelor of Education. Don't see many of those, but I have a couple of clients at the moment that have done just a BEd. So it's 4 years, full-time study, and as part of that BEd, they would have completed, probably on a BEd, probably about 160 days of supervised teaching practice, but the minimum required is 45 days. Most UK and Irish applicants tend to have a 3-year degree in anything. So they're undergrad, and then they've got their 12-month PGCE or PGDE. And it's the PGCE that is, is their initial teacher education qualification. So that's the part that must be, that must include the supervised teaching practice. Or alternatively, you have the Master of Teaching, which is theoretically the same as the PGCE, but it's just a master's. But one part of your qualification, and it must be at least 1 year duration full time, must be your initial teacher education. And that aspect of the qualification must include the supervised teaching practice.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Okay, secondary school teacher from the UK, relocate and begin teaching in Australia as soon as I arrive. Well, if you're looking to go temporary, 12-month working holiday visa is an option for you. You can skip over then from that over to a 482 and also the 462. But primarily, if you want to land with the best opportunity, as Rowan said before, to teach straight away in a long-term position, then the permanent 189 is really the way that you should be going if you're a secondary school teacher or those other teachers on the main occupations list. Unfortunately, primary school teachers will have to go to 190 state sponsored because they're on the secondary skill list. But the 189 is your option of landing and getting a full-time position. So that would be the strongest way to go. And look, that's what we're seeing a lot of as well. I mean, I was talking to Rowan earlier on. He's seeing a big swing into a lot of overseas teachers just biting the bullet and saying, right, we're just going to go for the skilled visa from the start, get our 5-year permanent residency visa. And am I right in saying, Rowan, that the employers love those particular teachers or educators because they've got their 5-year permanent residency visa to start work?
Absolutely, and principals would actually, they know that you've got even one in process. It hasn't been approved. If it's in process, they'll have a first round interview with you remotely in your home country. As long as they've commitment from you to show, look, I'm going to pay the money for this skilled visa. You're probably going to get it. Let's face it. It's being processed right now. Great. Let's have an interview. Let's start talking about what it looks like when you do arrive, and then we'll have a follow-up interview when you do arrive. So principals, just their eyes light up when we say we've got an educator with 5 years experience coming from another country in a subject that you have a vacancy for. They've got a skilled visa in process. Great. I want to see their CV. I want to check out their references, get them in front of me, and let's see if we can get a contract to them ASAP.
Right, fantastic. That sounds the way to go for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we touched on this earlier on. Yeah, look, we see this all the time, and Rowan has just reiterated it. Look, you can get your 12-month working holiday visa, be on your way to Australia. You could be landed, have your skills assessment, your English language test already completed, your expression of interest happening in the background. You're in Australia 2 months and bang, you've done your medicals, your criminals, and you've got your 189 visa, and you've got permanent residency. And then you're there basically for the next 5 years. And then if you're really serious, after you've been in Australia for 4 years, you can then apply for Australian citizenship, and you can have an Australian passport, and you can keep your UK passport or your Spanish passport, any passport you have. So a lot of countries allow the dual passports. And then for the rest of your life, you can live and work in either country. So that's the ideal scenario, is to get to that stage. I think we've already covered this, but I think this slide is really just about, for those people who are thinking of coming to Australia, get your skills assessment done, sooner rather than later. I mean, you'll know better than me, Sue, but it's often easier to get your legal documents, your degree, your transcripts. You need a letter from the university confirming your 45 days supervised teacher practice. So those documents are often easier to get whilst you're in the UK than halfway around the world in Australia. Do you agree with that, Sue?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of documents now are electronic, and because most, including the AITSL, they'll accept electronic letters for your supervised teaching practice, which means they can electronically sign it and email it over to you. So that makes it a little bit easier if you're not in the country. You're not waiting for it to come in the post anymore. But I just think, I mean, I always recommend my clients, if they're going through the process, they haven't lodged a visa yet, and they're thinking of going down on the working holiday visa, get your skill assessment in place first, or at least, and the skill assessment only takes 4 weeks at the moment, so it's worth waiting for that to be approved. Then we can get your expression of interest prepared, and then you can go off on your working holiday visa. But yeah, definitely try and do it all before you go.
Yeah, and not only that, if you're claiming work experience points in your skilled visa, you get 5 points for 3 years post-qualification, you get 10 points for 5 years, and you get 15 points for 8 years. But the Australian government will want to see your detailed employment references, and not references that say, oh no, John worked here for 3 years, he makes a great cup of coffee, he's a great bloke. It's got to be very specific. The dates, when you started, when you finished, the hours, the annual salary. There's got to be a job description in there, the tasks and duties that you're performing as an educator as well. And we also want to see pay slips for every 3rd month for every year, and bank statements, and preferably P60s, because the Australian government will want to see what you're actually doing in your work experience and make sure that you're actually getting paid for that work as well. So it's always good to get those documents before you head down under and enjoy yourself.
And importantly too, I just note on this, a lot of the state teaching authorities will require you to have the visa before you can actually apply for them. And out of all the states in Australia, if you're looking to register as a teacher, you can do that before you arrive everywhere except New South Wales. So the example being, Betty from the UK is an example, being on a working holiday visa, coming to Australia in the next 6 months, can apply for her Victorian Institute of Teaching registration before she leaves her home country. It'll take up to 6 weeks to process, and have that registration ready to rock and roll when she hits the ground, can actually teach the next day. Whereas if Betty wanted to go to Sydney and live in Sydney, she'd have to wait till she arrives, then apply for a working with children's check, and then apply for a registration, which could take up to 10 weeks to process, meaning she could not teach in a school until she has that registration back. So must have the visa for all of that before you get the registration underway. But importantly, if you're going to go to New South Wales, you cannot apply for NESA, they call it NESA there, until you're actually in the country, in the state, in New South Wales.
Wow.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So once again, it makes sense to get all your paperwork done and get it lodged for sure.
Yeah. I
Okay.
agree.
So, I mean, this is really probably a question for you again, Ron, which you've covered. But yeah, I mean, we can do the visa. I mean, we've got 2 or 3 teachers at the moment that have come to us from ANZ UK saying, I'm on a working holiday visa, working for a school. The school is really interested in sponsoring me, but they don't know what to do. We're happy to have a chat to them. I've got information sheets I can send through to the school, which gives them the costings, the timeframes. As a company, we basically hold the school's hand and get them approved as a standard business sponsor. We can also help them lodge a nomination to sponsor you and then lodge the visa application. So happy to have a chat to any employers out there who have never gone through the process and just run through it with them. What do you think about that, Ryan? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, these questions are good ones because we get asked this all the time. Of course, if you didn't, it's a lot of money to get a skilled visa. I mean, on the outset, but then you think about 5 years, it actually spreads out, it's actually quite cheap in a way. But some people say, no, I want to get sponsorship straight away. Well, I'll just say right now, again, it's really difficult and principals want to meet you in person. We have schools that have licenses to sponsor. Absolutely. I've asked for an updated list from the Department of Immigration that I should have in the next 30 days. Some of the schools we partner with already, some we hope to partner with in the future. I think, as I said before, if you have a skilled visa, you might get an interview remotely and then one when you arrive in Australia. Sponsorship is just I couldn't even share that many stories with you of people getting sponsored offshore. They're all been onshore, the ones that I'm aware of late, where they've impressed a school in person. They are anywhere, these schools that have licenses. They could be metro, they could be regional. I certainly, my message to you would be, don't expect to get sponsored without having met a principal. Now, I will send some information to you about Australian principals that will be in Ireland and the UK in March. And if you can meet with them and you can impress them then at an interview in person, you very well could get sponsored because they're looking to sponsor people, but only people they've met, only educators have met. Yeah, and it's typically all types of schools, as I said before. It could be public, it could be independent. We have teams that work with both settings, both independent and public settings. There are initiatives too. The Victorian Department of Education have currently got an international teacher relocation program up until July. So it's probably not too relevant to the audience today because I assume a lot of you wouldn't be planning to arrive until maybe August, September at the earliest. We hope it will be extended. It's more for encouraging educators to go to regional locations across Victoria, to smaller towns that find it harder to find teachers. They're more open to sponsoring and may consider having a remote interview as a first point of introduction. I'm just conscious of time because I know we've got lots of questions. I want to answer those. But the school I was talking about, where the principals are coming up, they've got a bunch of roles they want filled for January 2025 because the Australian school year is different to the Northern Hemisphere. We only started in Australia 2 weeks ago. The school year started 2 weeks ago. It will finish in December around Christmas time, and the new year will kick off late January. So the principals that I'm talking about that are coming to the UK and Ireland are looking to fill vacancies from January 2025. They know what type of educators they want, so that's why they want to be proactive around it. So that's a great gateway into getting a role, whether it's through sponsorship or other. I don't think there's anything else new that I can talk to you about there. But I mean, call to action for you out there, is I'm going to send an email out with Darren's consultation URL. You can book some time with him and his team for those visa questions, because ANZ UK are not visa experts. That's Darren and his team. We're not going to even guide you around that. We'll talk about the job. We'll talk about finding you the right job for you. So our team will have a conversation with you. There'll be links to each team member in the email I'll send out following this webinar. You can schedule a time that suits your time zone with one of the team. They will go through our compliance requirements and answer any questions you have around that in about half an hour. It's pretty good. Then it's just about understanding what's the best pathway to you, whether you've had a conversation with Darren and his team or not. Like, is it a skilled visa? Is it a working holiday visa? Is it some other type of visa? Partner, spousal, I don't know. Again, I'm not the expert. It's better to talk to Darren and his team about that. Once we've qualified you, and we understand that you could be recognised as a teacher in Australia based on that 4 years that Sue talked about and the 45 days of minimum practicum. If you can tick all those boxes, then we can start getting to work and finding schools that align with you and what you're looking for. You know, you can be granular. You can say, I only want to teach English and maths to 14 to 16-year-olds in a Catholic setting close to a big city. You can be that kind of granular in some instances. Being, you know, with skilled visas and sponsorship, obviously you need to be a bit more flexible. But we'll walk you through that side of things. Make sure you get your dream role or roles wherever they might be. Darren can help you with the visa types of questions, and hopefully, you know, you're in Australia within the next 12 months, living the dream wherever that might be within the country. Did you want to talk about this, Darren, or will I?
Relocation support, yeah, it's probably on your side if you don't mind.
Yep. So
if you'd like to cover that one, it'd be perfect. Yeah,
no worries. And this is from the government side of things. The Department of Education can actually, once you have a job offer, once that's secured, you've got a contract, Victorian government will help you and your family relocate to Melbourne or to regional Victoria for that job. And there's a breakdown of, you know, up to $10,000 that they'll provide to help you with flights and relocation costs as well. So that's an incentive that's worth considering for people heading to Victoria. I only have one for Victoria right now. I don't think there's any for any other states that my team have shared with me, the Permanent Opportunities team. I will keep you up to date though if there is. As I said before, STEM subjects are the ones in high demand. If you've got qualifications or experience in those areas, that's what schools are looking for. Again, though, there are regional settings in particular that will take all types of educators, primary, art, music, you know, ones that aren't listed here at all. So certainly, you know, it's worth considering that. And there's, as I said, great perks to working in regional settings as well. The 6-month restriction piece that you talked about before, Darren, was interesting too, because it is a real pain in the bum, particularly for British passport holders on working holiday visas. It means that, yes, you can stay in Australia for 3 years, and yes, you don't need to do any specified work, 88 days, but it does mean 6 different employers as a minimum, 6 different schools as a minimum over 3 years on a working holiday visa, which doesn't make a lot of sense to anyone, but that's what they've decided on. However, if you are an early childhood educator, they have waived that 6-month rule. So you could be on a working holiday visa as an early childhood educator and work for one employer for the entirety of that year on your visa, or the next year of your visa if you're going to go for 2 or 3 years. So that is a good move in the right direction, although it's not great if you're not an early childhood educator. The good news is, though, that our team can, when we talk about contracts, we talk about 6 weeks as a minimum or more. So a contract is 6 weeks or permanent. That's what we talk about, contracts. So you could potentially have a number of contracts, 2 or 3 contracts within a 6-month period. So that is absolutely, you're absolutely able to do that on a working holiday visa. The other question here that we posed was a primary teacher. Could you get sponsorship? Again, it would probably be in a regional setting, and it's pretty hard unless you meet the principals. Like we're having some come over next month, as I've said, to the UK and Ireland. I'm sorry if you're not in those regions. We don't have any trips planned for principals coming to other areas as of yet. But who knows? We're having lots of interest from Australian principals that want to come and recruit from overseas because we don't have the educators we need on the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing screen and I'm going to hit some questions that have been coming through the chat. And you would have seen a bunch too, Darren. So maybe we better
do you want
start.
me to work down from the top, or do you
Yeah,
want to read
maybe.
them?
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
ones that we haven't answered already.
Yeah, well, look, the first one I can see here, how long after the expression of interest can I expect to get an invitation for the 189? Well, Sue covered this. I mean, Misty has had one in 4 days. And Sue, you said you're averaging anywhere up to 4 weeks.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, I think
that's the visa grant though, isn't it?
no. So the expression of interest, there's no time frame. I mean, you know, if you're looking at a 189, or with any expression of interest you put in, it's valid for 2 years. So you could sit in Skill Select for 2 years waiting to be invited. So with 189s, it's based on how often immigration run an invitation round. You know, program year opened in July. We've had 1 round, and that was in December. I would like to think there's another round before the program closes in, you know, at the end of June. But, you know, that is, I guess, the only drawback of only looking at a 189. You're reliant on how often immigration run around. And because the numbers are so low, the quotas are so low this year, there's just not going to be that many, are there? I don't think. But on the flip side of that, the teachers that I have lodged EOIs for, and that would be secondary school and early years, not primary, on the 189, they all had invites in December. And some of them were only on 65 points. So whereas in previous years, you know, you'd be very lucky to get an invite on 65. Now, most teachers can achieve one. I had a couple of applications that we didn't lodge the EOIs until November, and they were picked up in the December round. So, you know, they're a priority occupation. You know, teachers and medical professionals, they are the only ones getting invites in the 189s at the moment. But, you know, it's like a piece of string as to how long you could sit in Skill Select waiting for an invite. Some clients will, if we've had an invitation round and they haven't been picked up, they'll then consider state sponsored. And then they'll put in a separate expression of interest for 190, nominating a state. And they're happy then to choose whichever one comes through first. And with the 190s, there's no rounds as such. It's when the state government decides to run around, and most of them are monthly. So yeah, if you're in a hurry, a lot of clients sort of think that they'd prefer to lodge a 190 EOI.
On that point, Sue, we can lodge a 189 and a 190 at the same time. So if you want, we can have 2 irons in the fire and gives you a better chance. So right, that's perfect. Thanks for clarifying that. Just happy for me to run through these, Ryan. Can I have the working holiday visa and get a permanent contract in a school for around 2 years? Well, yeah, depending on your passport and the 6-month requirement with one employer, you probably wouldn't get a 2-year contract. What I would say is if you're working for an employer for the last 6 months of your working holiday visa, then you get your 2nd year. You can then work for the first 6 months for that. So if you get a full year concurrently, if you work it out the right way. But no, unfortunately, I doubt when you get 2 years, except in your exception, Ryan, with that area.
Yeah, no. So you'd have to move from a working holiday visa onto some other type of visa to be in a contract for 2 years at one school. That's the reality. I will say that there's some more questions about the IELTS. In the follow-up email I'll send everyone, I'll give you an IELTS blog I actually wrote, with some updates, real recent updates about one skill retakes for anyone that fails on one of those sections. I will send that through with all the other information I mentioned. This question here from Alex, newly qualified teachers just about to finish their PGCE, eligible for the skilled visa, or do you need the 2-year work experience too?
No, so at the moment, no. Once you've completed your trainings, your initial teacher training, because obviously I assume she's done the bachelor, 3-year bachelor first, and now she's completing a PGCE. Once she has the PGCE, she can apply to AITSL straight away. They don't have a minimum work requirement, so she can get a positive skill assessment, get an English test, and she can lodge a 189 if she meets the 65 points, obviously, depending on her age, but she can lodge a 189 with no work experience. And at the moment, even on a 190, the only state that asks for work experience requirements for teachers at the moment is Queensland. And they want to see 3 years. But I've had so many come through from Victoria for teachers with 65 points, no work experience, only recently qualified. So yeah, they're not looking for tons of work experience at the moment. So it's good.
Sue, will they consider the QTS the first couple of years out of graduation as experience? Is that considered experience?
Yeah, so as long as you've got the skill assessment, because obviously AITSL doesn't look at a QTS, they're just looking at your 4 years, including your initial teacher education qualification. So QTS isn't something that the skill assessing authority look at, but most teachers will then do 1 year, is it 1 year or 2 years maybe for their QTS in the
Yep.
UK. That's considered skilled work experience because you're already qualified, you've already got your teacher qualification. So anything after your teacher qualification is considered skilled work experience.
Fantastic.
Even if you're a probationary teacher. Yeah.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Are 189s and 190 visas the only ones that require the skills assessment?
Yeah, correct. And the 491, which we haven't spoken about, because the 189 and the 190, everyone should be eligible for. So there's no point really talking about the 491 because that's the 5-year temporary visa and you're better off getting the PR. But all your skilled visas, 189, 190, 491, all require a skills assessment. Or a 186, which is employee sponsored direct, also needs a skills assessment as well.
Okay.
Working holiday doesn't, 482 doesn't.
Okay. Alex, question, have any full funded teachers to do a Masters of Education or teaching whilst working with them? Not in Australia that I'm aware of. It may have happened, but not with anything that I'm aware of, any of our schools. What of my initial teacher training? My PGC was done part-time over 2 years.
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. It has to be 1 year full-time or equivalent. So 18 months wouldn't be equivalent, but 2 years is equivalent to 1 year full-time. So as long as the transcript shows it was a 2-year a 2-year duration for the qualification, and it was part-time, and the supervised teaching practice letter confirms that, then yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Right. Nathan, what did it mean by restricted to one employer? This horrible rule is on working holiday visas. They want people to come down and pick fruit, basically, and milk cows whilst they work and travel. So you must you can have you have a 12-month visa, working holiday visa if you're not British passport holder. Within that 12 months, you can work as much as you want. You could work every day if you wanted, but you could not work for more than 6 months with the same employer. So we're looking at education terms. You could not work for one school more than 6 months in that 12-month period. So your contract, if we got you a contract, could only be 6 months at one school. Or you could do temp work, relief work, emergency work at multiple schools for that whole 12-month period. So that's what that one employer for 6 months. Same if I was in hospitality, I could work in a cafe for 6 months on my working holiday visa. Then I'd have to switch to a new employer or travel and surf and work 88 days towards my second year. That's what it means, Alex. I hope that made sense to you. Can you work as a teaching assistant on a working holiday visa? Absolutely, whilst you're waiting for VIT. Absolutely, we've got heaps of teaching assistant work in Victoria only, not anywhere else. So we can, if you're waiting on your VIT, we can do that. You can work in whatever industry you want on a working holiday visa. There's no restrictions around that. Where are principals going in the UK? London, Manchester and Dublin. And I will send you the link to that after this one, Nathan. I've been told I might have to teach in the outback or do farm work on the working holiday visa. Is this still true? So typically the specified work, the 88 days, is not near a major city. It's typically outside in regional areas. In saying that, we've had people work on farms, schooling children. The farmers have children. They work and teach the children in the homestead. We've had people pearl diving. We've had people milking cows, picking pineapples, picking almonds, all across the country. So it can be in any state. Tour guiding in Northern Territory, I think, is another thing. Flood recovery, bushfire recovery. There's an abundance of, it's not all bad, back-breaking tomato picking work. There's lots of variety and sometimes complements your holidays. So don't put a line through it just yet. I've got a mate on the Great Ocean Road. He looks after silage, and he anyone that comes and works for him for their 88 days, $30 an hour Australian, free accommodation and access to a car. They have to pay for their own fuel, but they have access to a truck, to a ute. So pretty good. No accommodation costs. $30 an hour is pretty good too. So the only passport holders that are exempt from the 88 days of specified work are British passport holders only at this point. Okay, it's no one else. Hopefully it will extend out to other nationalities, but it's only British. Is there a template for the supervised teaching letter? There's not, but all you need to do is just ask your university on letterhead paper, on their own paper, to say, can you just write a letter saying I have completed X amount of days of supervised practicum placement. That's all they need to do, and unless Sue tells me otherwise, that will be accepted.
Yeah, it has to say they have sort of a set sort of info that must be included. So it must state the age range, not just the grade. So it can't say grade 3 or grade 4. It must state the age range, how many days, and yeah, as you say, Rowan, on their official letterhead, signed, dated. So it's, yeah, a few lines long, really. Yeah.
Yep. Primary teachers. I'm an elementary school teacher. I'm looking to relocate to Australia. Is there any sponsorship for elementary school teachers? So, but can primary teachers get 482s, I guess is the question.
Yes, definitely. Any person on an occupation, on the skilled occupation list, can get a 482 visa. That's fine. The issue will be, though, like you said before, is can they get the license to teach? So that's what they'd have to look at. The visa is not an issue. For the 482, they'd have to have a teaching qual and 2 years work experience, or a minimum of 5 years.
Yep. So, yeah, it's just, yeah, the skilled visa by far. We keep coming back to it, and yes, it might look like a bit of money on the onset, but 5 years of, what you divide whatever it is, $6,000, $7,000 by 5, $1,200 a year, plus you can get a passport at the end of it if you still, you apply for residency. So sounds like a pretty sweet deal to me, Darren, to be honest. Yeah,
definitely, Ryan, that's for sure.
Long-term investment.
Yeah, it's a great place to live too. I miss it, Australia. So
especially when it's cold like it is here at the moment. Yeah.
What do you mean cold? It's going to be 42 tomorrow here.
Yeah, for you it is. For you it is.
Okay. We're going to wind things up now, but I will follow up with that email that I talked about, linking to Darren's consultation URL and all the other information about IELTS and the ANZ UK team that you can meet with. Your calls to action out there, get that CV ready. Like, make sure you've got all your ducks in a row. Do your research, talk to your family, talk to your partner. Consider doing this sooner rather than later, because as Sue and Darren have said, these things that we've talked about now, that what the government in each state are saying about each visa, aren't going to be forever, are they? Like, these things could change at the drop of a hat, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been the last 2 years that teachers have been a priority occupation. You don't know whether that will continue into the next programme year. It may do, but that at some point they're going to fill their quotas of teachers. They're going to have sufficient teachers. So yeah, take it while the iron's hot, really.
Yeah. Yes, good advice. So I want to thank everyone, Darren and Sue, for joining us. We know it's all different time zones. We're all connected on here, but I really appreciate your expert advice. And I'm sure the audience does as well. And lots of them will reach out to that link I will share. Appreciate your insights. And I appreciate everyone giving time wherever you are in the world to listen to us. Hopefully you got something out of it. And looking forward to getting you on the Big Tin Bird and supporting you through this adventure and this journey down under to whichever state that may be. So thanks again. Have a wonderful evening, day, morning, wherever you are. And thanks again, Darren and Sue. I really appreciate your advice.
Yeah,
No,
pleasure.
thanks a lot,
Yeah.
Rowan. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
See you. Bye.